Yay! Today we get to start our next module, Module 4. This marks the halfway point of the semester. So you make sure you have all your grades in by Friday of everything for the modules 1 through 3. Because all that's going to close on Friday. So today's goal is to solve problems using ratios and proportions. And we're going to do a quick map task, and then take some notes, and then you'll have some practice time. So let's go ahead and get started. Here is a map. This is one of the biggest ways that we use, here's the map. One of the biggest ways we use ratios and proportions. So on your telephone, when you do a MapQuest or Google Maps, you're actually taking the world and shrinking it down by a ratio. And you can use that ratio to set up a proportion to figure out how far you're traveling. And so next week I'm going to be going from Knoxville to Atlanta, and here's a map of how to get there. And I want to know, since this is the map, it has a scale of 1 centimeter is equal to 360 miles. And so here, this ratio right here, that's how we draw a ratio. That's telling me 1 centimeter equals 360 miles in real life. Now what if I had a distance that was 20 centimeters? What would I do? Well, first of all, I have to set up my ratio. And my ratio in this case is centimeters over miles. And so when I set up my problem, I always have to make sure that my centimeters are in the numerator and my miles are in the denominator. You can do it the other way around. This is just easier for me. So I know from the scale that 1 centimeter is 360 miles. And now I want to know how much 20 miles is. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in with an X right there and solve it. And what you do when you solve a ratio is you do cross products. So I'm going to multiply these numbers together and these numbers together, and I get 1x is equal to 7,200 miles. So if I went 20 centimeters on my map, I'm actually going 7,200 miles. Now let's look. The actual distance between the two cities is 214 miles. So now I'm going to use the same map, and I'm going to calculate centimeters to miles. And I'm going to say that equals 1 centimeter is equal to 360 miles. And I want to know 214 miles. Well, I know my miles are in the denominator, so I have to put my 214 here, and the centimeters is what I'm looking for. And so once again, because this is a proportion, this should all be reviewed. I see the equal sign in the middle. I'm going to do cross products. So I get 360x equals 214. And just from looking at this, I know that I'm going to get a decimal. And so x is actually equal to, when I divide this out, 0.59 centimeters. So my answer is 59 centimeters. And then you can use this information to figure out, if you were to take a trip, how much gas you're going to have to spend. We're going to skip that problem for now and continue working. So let's look at another example. Oops, I did it again, not being patient. So next week, I'm also going to be going to Myrtle Beach. And so I want you to help me get to Myrtle Beach. And what I found out is terrible news. But I checked the Weather Channel. 4 days we're going to the beach. It's supposed to rain every day, so that's just my luck. So first thing I got to look for is my ratio or my scale. And so it says the scale for the map is 1 to 75, and this is in inches to miles. The key word is going to be the word 2. That tells you you're looking at a ratio. So I know that 1 inch is going to equal 75 miles. So this time my ratio is inches to miles. And I'm going to try to figure out, knowing that 1 inch is 75, that's my unit rate. I've got 3 inches, how many miles is that? So you can go ahead and work it out. You do your cross products. 1x is going to equal 150. I'm sorry, 73 times 5 is 225. So in this case, 3 inches is equal to 225 miles. Now be careful with the next example. Again, we're going to do inches over miles because that's my ratio. And I know that 1 inch is 75 miles. This time I have 150 miles and I want to know the inches. So once again, I solve by doing cross products. So I get 150 equals 75x. So I'm going to divide both sides by 75. And I get x equals 2. So that means if I go 150 miles on the map, it'd be equivalent to 2 inches. So that's approximately, I guess maybe to Asheville. Next, we're going to look at 280. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure this out. Next, we're going to look at, it's 411 miles. The answer to this one is 3.73. So if you got that, you did a good job. The actual distance between Knoxville and Myrtle Beach is 411 miles. What is this distance on the map? I'm going to solve this problem up here. So this is a total of 411 miles. So first of all, I know that 1 inch is equal to 75 miles, and I'm looking at 411 miles. We want to know how many inches is that. So it's the same situation. We're going to do cross products. So I get 411 equals 75x. So I'm going to divide both sides by 75. And when I work it out, I get x is equal to 5.48 inches. So this is 5.48 inches. And so from here all the way to here, we would expect that it's 5.48 inches. All right, you can skip that last problem. All right, so what we've been doing is using ratios and proportions to solve these math problems. So what is a ratio? Well, a ratio is a comparison of two quantities. So we were looking at centimeters and miles or inches and miles. Those were our two quantities. We can express it as a fraction with the word 2 or with a colon. We saw that in every single one of the examples we just looked at. Extended ratios will just compare more than two things, 3 or more of something. So we want to write these ratios in simplest form so we can compare them. And we do that just simply by simplifying fractions. And so I look at 39 and 33, and I know they can both be divided by 3. And I get 13 over 11. So that's the ratio in simplest form. 75 and 400, well, I know 5 goes into both, but I'm going to look for the largest common factor, and that's 25. So I'm going to divide both by 25, and I end up with, yes, that is correct, 3 over 60. One thing to be careful of is when you're comparing your two quantities, like in this situation here, we want to make sure our units are the same. And so this is 6 days to 2 weeks. 2 weeks is 14 days. So first you want to convert to days. Then you can go ahead and write your ratio of 6 over 14. 2 goes into both, and you end up with 3 over 7. And here again, you have to know that you can either convert inches to feet or feet to inches. In this case, let's go ahead and convert it to inches. And so I know that 3 feet, each foot has 12 inches in it. So I know this is going to be a total of 36 inches. And so I'm comparing now 24 inches to 36 inches. And when I simplify, I know that 12 can go into both. And I end up with 2 over 3. All right. So these are ratios. Now we're going to talk about when you put two ratios together, you can actually make a proportion. And so a proportion is an equation that shows two equivalent fractions, or ratios in this case. So the word here is proportion, and I always say proportion so that I can spell it correctly. It's one of those words. So there's actually 3 methods to determine if a ratio forms a proportion. Please remember that you have to have equal ratios. And so to get those equal ratios, the first way you can simplify the fractions. And here you'll notice that this simplifies to 1 over 14 and so does this. So yes, this you can set up a proportion. In method 2, you're changing the fractions into decimals, and you notice that these decimals equal each other. So yes, this you could set up into a proportion as well. In the map situation, we were looking at real life being scaled down, so you could set up a proportion for that as well. Method 3 is my favorite. This is the one that you'll probably use the most. You cross multiply. So 70 times 8 is 560, and 5 times 112 is 560. And since your cross products equal, you can set up a ratio, or a proportion, excuse me. So those are the 3 ways to do it. Now we're going to first have to determine whether the following are a proportion. And when you're solving for an unknown, you can assume that they're going to set up a proportion. So I'm going to use cross products as my way. So whenever there's an equal sign in the middle, that tells me cross products. So I know this is 180, this is 180, so yes. We have a proportion. And over here, I set up my cross products, 42 times 5, that's 210. 3 times 75 is 225. And since these are not equal, this is not going to set up a proportion. So that's big old no. All right, so that's the background. Hopefully that was a review. Go ahead and pause the video and try, well, no, let's go ahead and do these together. So here we're going to use cross products to solve these proportions. So we're going to assume that they're equivalent. And so what you do, you see the equal sign in the middle. So I'm going to use my cross products and solve for x, which is just like what we did in the math problems. So I got 28x equals, well, 9 times 84 is 756. So when I divide both sides by 28, I can figure out that x is going to be equal to 27. Now over here, same situation. I see the equal sign in the middle, so I'm going to use my cross products. 3 times 7 is 21. 18 times 4x is 72x. Divide by 21, and I get x equal to, dun, 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 dun. Oh, do you see what I did wrong here? People, I hope you noticed that. I divided by the wrong product. Don't do that. You always divide by the number in front of x. So I'm not dividing by 21. I'm dividing by 72. Don't make that mistake. And so I know my answer is going to be a decimal, and the answer is actually 0.29. All right, now for the next problems, I've got an expression being multiplied by a number. And so what you have to make sure, I see my equal sign in the middle, so I know I'm going to use cross products, but you have to multiply the entire expression by the number. And so what that means is you have to use the distributive property. So on this side, I've got 4 being multiplied by b plus 16. And on the other side, I've just got 3 times 48. And so this is 4b plus 64. 3 times 48 is 144. So I just solve this like a regular 2-step equation. Take away 64 from both sides. And I get 4b equals 80. Divide that by 4, and b is actually equal to 20. We'll do another one together, and this one you're going to try on your own. So let's go ahead and look at here. We're going to put this in parentheses, and you get 8 times k plus 17, and 5 times 152. So this is 8k plus 136 equals 760. So go ahead and finish both, and I'll come back with the answers to numbers 4 and 5.